during the until there's a CBA in place, if there is one, and that moratorium has now been agreed upon. The WNBA and WNBPA have reached an agreement on a moratorium for league business. Sources tell ESPN, Ramona Shelburne, who is a NBA insider, this is necessary because the sides have failed to reach an agreement on a new CBA or extension by the January 9 deadline.
That exhaustion you just heard. That's not just one commentator's frustration. That's the sound of momentum dying in real time. The WNBA just came off its biggest season ever thanks to Caitlin Clark, signed a massive new media rights deal, and had 2 expansion teams ready to launch. And now, they can't even agree on how to pause their own business operations. On January 9th, 2025, the deadline came and went. No new collective bargaining agreement, no extension. And what should have been a celebration of growth turned into a public relations disaster that's now threatening the league's future.
It's a pipe dream. It's a pipe dream. And they could very well end the league over a pipe dream, something that was never realistic. And whoever is advising these players of the business side, the players are listening to them and they're going to kill this business. Right here, this was Front Office Sports just a little while before this. The union felt the league's proposal contained unnecessary language beyond simply delaying free agency, according to a source familiar with the negotiations. It looked to remove language in its counter-proposal.
Here's what that pipe dream comment is really about. The players' union is demanding revenue sharing similar to what NBA players get, mid around 50% of basketball-related income. Sounds reasonable until you look at the actual numbers. The WNBA has operated at a loss for most of its existence, subsidized by the NBA to the tune of tens of millions annually. Revenue sharing works when there's profit to share. When there isn't, you're not splitting revenue, you're splitting losses. And this is where the disconnect becomes dangerous. The union leadership is treating this negotiation like the league is hiding money, when the financial reality is that most WNBA teams still aren't profitable even after the Caitlin Clark bump. The players want guarantees based on projections, not current reality.
They cannot make an agreement on it, it seems like. They came to this moratorium agreement, but once again, the Players Association had to make some kind of change in there. Let's be honest, they're getting butthurt in everything that's being done. And the last thing they need is to bring this thing to a snail's pace. That's where we're at. On Monday afternoon, the WNBA-PA received a response from the league. Last week, the WNBA contacted every team's front office to advise them that they can begin sending out qualifying offers and court designations under the expired agreement.
Now, this is where it gets tactical. The league's move to send out qualifying offers wasn't about getting players to sign them. Nobody expected signatures without a CBA in place. This was psychological warfare, and it was actually smart business. By putting actual dollar amounts in front of players, the league forced everyone to confront real numbers instead of theoretical percentages. When you're negotiating revenue sharing at 30% versus 50%, those are abstract concepts. But when a player sees a qualifying offer for $200,000 sitting on her desk, that's concrete. That's mortgage payments. That's her kid's college fund. Suddenly, the risk of holding out for a better deal becomes very, very real.
Lexi Brown, Kalani Brown are the only players not on rookie contracts signed through 2026. Quote, they might be going out because that's how it's written. WNBPA VP Brianna Stewart said Saturday at Unrivaled. Once again, you got people talking from competitors' professional leagues. It's unprofessional. Quote, we have a pretty standard messaging across PA and the EC of making sure we're all on the same side of not signing anything.
And there it is. The union's counter strategy, collective pressure. Don't sign anything. Stay unified, because the moment one player breaks ranks and accepts a qualifying offer, the entire negotiating position weakens. But here's the problem with that approach in this specific situation. The WNBA isn't like the NBA where every player is making millions and can afford to sit out a season. The majority of WNBA players make under $100,000 annually. Many of them play overseas in the off-season just to make ends meet. How long can they really hold out when rent is due and there's no paycheck coming? This is why the union leadership's position is so precarious. Brianna Stewart and Nafisa Collier can afford to take a hard line. They've got unrivaled paying them salaries. They've got endorsement deals. They've got financial cushions. But what about the player making $60,000 who just got cut from her overseas team? How long before she starts looking at that qualifying offer differently?
If this was a typical free agency window, WNBA GMs would have until January 20th to send out qualifying offers and core designations. Teams are not expected to send out offers as both sides continued discussions over moratorium, which they just came to an agreement on. This is the first deadline the WNBA and union face that starts to push back on official league business from the timeline laid out in the current CBA. Wow. The league is also behind on when it has usually conducted the expansion draft, which the Toronto Tempo, Portland Fire need, but the expansion draft date is not laid out in the legally binding CBA.
The Toronto Tempo and Portland Fire were supposed to conduct their expansion drafts weeks ago. These are billion-dollar franchise investments waiting in limbo. The league typically holds expansion drafts in December or early January, giving new teams time to build rosters, plan training camps, and market their inaugural seasons. None of that is happening, and it gets worse. Arena scheduling is now becoming a crisis. Ramona Shelburne reported that NBA arenas are starting to book other events on dates that were tentatively held for WNBA games. Once those dates are gone, they're gone. You can't just bump a concert or a convention that's been booked months in advance. The league could end up with a compressed schedule, back-to-back road trips, and all the competitive disadvantages that come with poor scheduling. Every day without a CBA isn't just costing the league money, it's costing legitimacy.
CBA, I would love to know. I would love to know how many players actually want to take the current CBA. And in this league, let's be real. This league has a history that Lord knows we've talked about, of bullying their players, each other, treating each other badly. So what do you think they're going to do to people that want to sign the CBA and go play basketball? How do you think that's going to go? You won't tell me, you won't convince me that there's probably not some level of intimidation going on right now among the union and its members and its players. Can you imagine if you're the one player or you're a group of, let's say there's 12 players that are like, I want to sign the new CBA. How are they going to be treated?
This is the part nobody's talking about publicly, but it's absolutely happening behind closed doors. The WNBA has a documented history of players bullying each other, freezing out those who don't conform to the dominant group's expectations, and creating hostile environments for anyone who breaks ranks. So imagine you're a role player making $70,000. You've got 2 kids, rent in a major city, and your overseas contract just fell through. You look at that qualifying offer and think, you know what, that's fair money, I'll take it and play basketball. But the moment you sign, what happens? Your teammates freeze you out. The union leadership publicly criticizes you. Social media attacks you as a scab, a sellout, someone who betrayed the sisterhood. How many players are sitting at home right now wanting to sign, but terrified of the social consequences? How many would vote to accept the league's current offer if it was a truly anonymous vote but won't speak up because they know they'll be ostracized? The union leadership has other business interests. Stewart and Collier run unrivaled. Their calculations include revenue streams beyond just WNBA salaries, but the majority of players don't have those options. They just want to play basketball and get paid fairly for it. And right now, they're caught between economic pressure and social pressure, unable to advocate for their own interests without facing consequences.
This is why they got the wrong people in charge of the players union, because they got other things that are part of their equations that aren't part of the equation for many of the players. There's a lot of those players that don't give a rip about Unrivaled or about their business in Unrivaled. They want to play in the WNBA. Caitlin Clark's one of them. I'm just bringing that up.
And then there's Caitlin Clark, who represents everything this negotiation is really about. She's the player who drove viewership to record levels. Her games averaged over 2 million viewers, with some broadcasts hitting nearly 4 million. She's the reason the league got a new media rights deal worth exponentially more than the previous one. She's the player who actually generated the revenue growth everyone's fighting over, and she's not playing in Unrivaled. She's not out there making public statements about the CBA. She's staying quiet, staying neutral, and by all accounts, she just wants to play basketball in the WNBA. She doesn't have the same incentives as the union leadership because her value isn't tied to collective bargaining outcomes. Her value is tied to her individual performance and marketability, which transcends whatever structure the CBA creates.
It's officially a PR disaster for the league. Right after they started growing the league, this is officially bad. It's bad. Tell me what you think. Peace. I'm out.
So let's talk about what this really means for the future of the WNBA, because we're at a genuine crossroads here. This isn't just a negotiating tactic that got a little messy. This is a fundamental crisis that reveals deep structural problems with how this league operates. First, the business model problem. The WNBA has never figured out how to be consistently profitable across all teams. Yes. Some franchises make money. Yes. The Caitlin Clark effect drove revenue up significantly in 2024, but one breakout star doesn't fix systemic issues with attendance, local media deals, and operational costs. The players want to be paid like NBA players, but the revenue simply isn't there yet to support that model, and demanding it through collective bargaining doesn't magically create the money. Second, the leadership problem. The players' union is being led by individuals who have significant conflicts of interest. When your union president runs a competing basketball league that benefits from WNBA instability, how can players trust that decisions are being made in their best interests? When union leadership is publicly dismissive of the league's financial realities and calls revenue-sharing concerns a pipe dream, that's not negotiating in good faith, that's ideological positioning that could end careers. Third, the timing problem. This is catastrophically bad timing for a labor dispute. The league just had its best season ever. Mainstream media was finally paying attention, casual sports fans were tuning in, expansion was creating excitement, and now, instead of capitalizing on that momentum, we're watching it evaporate in real time. Every week without a CBA is another week of negative headlines, frustrated fans, and lost opportunities. Fourth, the internal division problem. Not all players are on board with the union's hardline approach, but they can't say so publicly without facing social and professional consequences. That's not solidarity, that's coercion. A healthy union represents all its members' interests, including those who would prefer to compromise and play basketball rather than hold out for demands that may not be realistic. Fifth, the competitive disadvantage problem. While the WNBA is paralyzed by labor disputes, other women's basketball opportunities are emerging. Unrivaled is paying players well for a short season. International leagues are expanding. The WNBA's monopoly on elite women's basketball in the United States is not guaranteed forever. If this labor dispute drags on and players start seeing viable alternatives, the league's negotiating position only gets weaker. Now, the moratorium they just agreed to meet, yes, that's something. It at least prevents the chaos of teams sending out offers that players won't sign while pretending business is normal. But a moratorium isn't a solution. It's just an acknowledgement that they're stuck. It's a pause button on a crisis, not a resolution. Here's what needs to happen for this to get fixed. The union needs to bring in financial experts who can honestly assess what's realistic given the league's actual revenue and profitability, not what they wish it was, not what they think it should be, but what it actually is. Then they need to structure a deal that creates upside participation for players as the league grows, without demanding guaranteed percentages of revenue that doesn't exist yet. The league needs to open its books completely. If players don't believe the financial picture the owners are painting, show them the receipts. Full transparency on team revenues, expenses, and profitability. Let an independent auditor verify everything. Remove any doubt about whether owners are hiding money. Both sides need to recognize that the Caitlin Clark effect is real but not permanent. She drove massive growth in 2024, but there's no guarantee that continues if the product on the court suffers due to labor disputes, compressed schedules, or loss of momentum. The window to capitalize on her impact is limited, and they're wasting it, and someone needs to address the elephant in the room: the union leadership's conflicts of interest. If Stewart and Collier want to run a rival, that's fine, but they can't simultaneously lead a union negotiation where WNBA instability directly benefits their competing league. That's an impossible position that undermines trust on all sides. The comment about this officially being a PR disaster, that's not hyperbole. The league spent decades building credibility, finally broke through to mainstream audiences, and is now watching it crumble over a labor dispute that most casual fans don't understand and don't care about. They just want to watch basketball, and every day this drags on is another day those casual fans forget the WNBA exists. So where does this end? 3 possible scenarios. Best case, both sides compromise within the next few weeks, sign a CBA that includes some revenue sharing with reasonable caps and growth triggers, and salvage enough of the off-season to conduct expansion drafts and free agency before training camps. The season starts a bit late, but happens. Middle case, this drags into March or April, the season is delayed, some players break ranks and sign, creating internal division that poisons team chemistry for years. The season eventually happens, but is diminished, and the momentum from 2024 is completely lost. Worst case, no deal gets reached, players strike, the season is cancelled, expansion teams sue for damages, arena contracts are breached, media partners renegotiate their deals downward, and the league suffers damage it never fully recovers from. Some players permanently move to international leagues or unrivaled, and the WNBA becomes a secondary option rather than the premier destination for women's basketball. Which scenario happens depends entirely on whether both sides can set aside ego and ideology long enough to recognize what's actually at stake here. This isn't just about money, or percentages, or who wins the negotiation. This is about whether the WNBA survives as a viable professional league, or becomes a cautionary tale about squandering opportunity. The players deserve to be paid more. That's not in question. The league has underpaid players for years, and the growth in 2024 proves there's more money available than previous CBAs reflected. But deserving more and demanding unrealistic percentages are different things. The path forward requires acknowledging both truths simultaneously. So here's my question for you. If you were advising the players' union right now, what would you tell them to do? Take the league's current offer and play basketball, or hold out for revenue sharing even if it means risking the entire season, because that's the choice they're facing, whether they want to admit it or not. Let me know in the comments what you think the right move is here, because this situation is only getting more complicated by the day.